Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Imagine racing a triathlon at 73, not for a medal, not for ego, just because it's Tuesday and you still can. That's Bob Babbitt. He has been racing since the early days of triathlon, back when athletes slept in tents mid race, refueled with Big Macs, and did not know yet that it was all supposed to be impossible. But this episode isn't just about sport. It's about identity, community, and how movement can keep us young, curious, and laughing through the decades. Bob's a master storyteller, equal parts historian, hype man, and wise cracking uncle. He calls his age group 70 to death. And he jokes that too many people his age are chasing prescriptions and reading obits. That's obituaries. And Bob is not doing that. He is still chasing personal records. And along the way, he's built magazines, nonprofits, and a global movement around the power of sport to change lives. In this episode, we go from the gritty origins of Ironman to Bob's daily routine: infrared saunas, cold plunges, and early morning pull ups. We unpack the myth that triathlon is only for elites and show how anyone, even total beginners, can use movement to rebuild their lives and their confidence. If you are in your 40s, 50s, 70s, or more, this one will land deep because Bob reminds us of something simple but profound. As long as there is air in your lungs, you should be moving.
I'm at my home in Carlsbad, California. Got up at 5 and did I go to a place called Breathe Degrees where we did about 35 minutes infrared sauna and about 15 minutes in the cold 40-degree cold plunge. And then then got another 20 minutes back in the infrared sauna. And then came home and my wife makes these amazing muffins with flaxseed, almond flour, and I have those with grapes and tangerines.
Bob, what a delightful start. Is this part of your normal routine? Are you doing this every day?
Pretty much, yeah. I like the cold plunge opens at 5:30 in the morning, so the breathing opens at 5:30 in the morning. I love getting over there first thing. It's just a really nice way to start the day, and I really started going there, Chris, in July because I had a back surgery, the first surgery I've ever had. I had the nerve root and the disc T4 issue there. So I had to have surgery and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't really I was in a lot of pain, so I couldn't do much beforehand. And a friend suggests going to cold plunge because then everything would get numb and I wouldn't feel any pain. And I started doing that before, and then I found it really helpful for rehab afterwards. And I anytime I'm in town, I usually go twice a day for, in the morning and then later in the afternoon as well.
Wow. Twice a day, which sounds like it has dual benefits, benefits to your journey as an athlete, but also in helping you rehab
Mm.
from this, yeah, critical surgery. Besides this renewed focus on the cold plunging and the sauna routine, have you actually been doing this kind of therapy for much longer than you've had your surgery?
Yeah, that I started in July. I really had not done cold or sauna. I mean, if you're a resort, you jump into a sauna, but it wasn't a regular part of a routine. But it is now, and it's been wonderful. So, and you meet nice people, but it was a great way to, because you're gonna have to ice your back anyway. So why not sit in 40 degrees and talk to people at the same time? Makes a lot more fun.
I could use, I would need every type of distraction on the
That's the
planet to
thing.
be able to survive.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
Bob,
very
it is
good. Yeah, I wouldn't be very good doing it on my own. Having a cold plunge thing at the house, I don't think I would use it. It's the social part is what makes it enjoyable.
such an excellent point for anybody listening who's thinking about investing the dollars into a cold plunge unit. It might end up just as treadmills and stationary
Yeah,
bikes ended up,
exactly.
for like hanging racks for for laundry. Bob, it is such an honor to have you on this podcast, particularly because I think you might be the first bona fide triathlete. We've had people on the podcast who have done triathlons, done different types of multi-sport endurance events, but but to have you who has had this, let's say, this iconic status, this full-time status in the world of triathlons is yeah, such an honor. I understand that your journey into triathlons started way back when. I believe you were there in 1980 racing Ironman before most people even knew what a triathlon was. So, Bob, take us back.
Sure.
What was it like stepping into an event so raw, maybe experimental, where no one really knew what it was humanly, yeah, possible to finish that?
Well, it's funny, at the time in 1978, I moved here to San Diego from Chicago, and then Ned Overend, who went on to become world mountain bike champion, but mountain bikes hadn't been invented back then. The two of us met rock climbing down in Mexico, and we became roommates. And then we read in 1979 in an article in Sports Illustrated about this thing called the Ironman. And in 78, 15 people had started it and 12 finished, and the same in 79. So it's not like it was catching on. But the fascinating part was in, in when we read the article in 79, again, it was like an 8 to 10 page article in Sports Illustrated, which was sort of the Bible for all of us back then. And it's like, why would it be such a long article on such a teeny event, 15 idiots? And it's a 2.4 mile swim. And little history is there had been a article earlier in 77 in Sports Illustrated that said that the world's best endurance athlete was Eddie Merckx, who had won the Tour de France 5 times. And so there was a event on the island of Oahu, called the Perimeter Relay, and John Collins, who had learned about the sport of triathlon when he lived in Coronado with his family. The early triathlons were held at Fiesta Island starting in 74 in San Diego. He and his family had done these events. So they just did this run around the island of Oahu, a relay run. And the article on Eddie Merckx had come out, and all of them started arguing about, well, wait a second, why is a cyclist the greatest endurance athlete? well, we're runners. Why can't it be us? And we all, and if you're living on an island, you're sort of doing swimming, you're doing cycling, you're doing running as a group. And so after this argument was going on for a while, John Collins gets up and goes, listen, we're going to find out once and for all who the best endurance athlete. We're going to take the Waikiki rough water swim, 2.4 miles, the Around Oahu bike ride, 112 miles, and the Honolulu Marathon, which is 26.2 miles. We'll put all three of them together and we'll call the winner the Ironman. And then he promptly sat down and forgot about it. And then since he was working in the Navy over there, one of the guys there kept saying, sir, when are we going to do that iron thing, sir? So in February of 1978, he put on the first ever Ironman triathlon. And in 79, it happened again. And we read the article, and the guy who won it in 79 was a guy named Tom Warren, who lived here in San Diego. And he put on an event called the Tug Swim Run Swim that Ned and I had done. And it was one of those classic events. It was a half-mile swim around this Crystal Pier in San Diego, a 5-mile run on the beach, and you swam around the pier again. But you didn't stop at the finish line. Tom Warren owned a thing called Tug's Tavern. So the idea was you came across the finish line and ran a few more blocks to his tavern, because the first 75 people got breakfast, right? You got breakfast, runny eggs, and a Tug's glass. And that's what the bragging rights were, because you were standing there with your breakfast and your glass when the 76th guy got there and got nothing. So that was a draw. But Ned and I would do that event. So anyways, we called Tom Warren up and said, Mr. Warren, sir, can you tell us about this iron thing? Because it's not like you go online and find out how to do it, where to do it, how to train. Nobody knew. So Tommy goes, hey, yeah, Babbitt, come down to my office, which is just south of Crystal Pier on the west side of the street. So I go down there with Ned, and we're like, there's no buildings there. There's a motorhome, right? There's a parking lot, and there's a bike on the back of this motorhome, and there's a paddleboard on top, and there's running shoes tied around the side view mirror on the outside. And Babbitt and Tommy's like, Babbitt, welcome to my office. And he had a payphone behind him. So he owned a tavern. So he would go for a swim and go for a paddle in the ocean, get a 5-mile run in, payphone behind him, go call and order chips or salsa or other crap for his bar. And then he'd go ride his bike up to Oceanside and back. And so he was doing this triathlon stuff. That was his lifestyle. That's what he's doing. So he invites us to the bar. This is 9:30 in the morning. The bar behind his motorhome called TD Hayes, and Ned and I are sitting there. And again, this is our mentor. This is a guy who's going to show us how to do this thing. And he's drinking beer 9:30 in the morning, and then he's got a magic marker. And he's got this magic marker, and every time he takes a drink, he makes a mark on his arm. And I'm like, Mr. Warren, sir, what's the deal with the magic marker? He goes, well, I have a little bit of a drinking problem. When I get to my sleeve, I go home. And we're like, oh, okay. You are an absolute crazy person. Then he took us to his house, and he had a bike mounted in the sauna, and he'd ride 5 hours a day in the sauna, to get ready for the heat of Hawaii. So Ned and I went to a police auction, and we bought bikes at a police auction. My bike was $75. The whole back end was burnt in a fire, and covered that up with duct tape. And, both of us really didn't know what this thing was. All I knew was that I was going to put pannier, sleeping bag, and tent on the bike, because I thought you swam 2.4, rode 56, camped out, rode back the next day, and then ran the marathon. And, we had no idea that you're supposed to do a whole thing in one day. It was the silliest thing ever. In fact, when we went over there to do the event, Ned's girlfriend, Pam, that he ended up marrying, she lost him in the first half mile of the bike. So when she finally caught him at mile 90, he was in the median strip drinking out of sprinklers, because she had any aid in 90 miles, right? Yeah. My crew gave me a Big Mac fries and a Coke at mile 25, your own support crew, root beer snow cone at mile 90. And then when I came off the bike, I heard this music, and I saw this boombox and a bamboo mat. And I'm like, what's going on? My crew was like, how about a massage? I'm like, you know what? I could use a massage. I had a 45-minute massage between the bike and the run, probably the longest transition in Ironman history. It felt great. And they had scales set up along the bike ride and the run because they came up with some science. I don't know where they came up with it. They would have you get off the bike and get weighed. And, during a run, same thing. If you lost 5% of your body weight, they pulled you out of the race because they thought it was dangerous. But again, nobody knew what we were doing. So I get off the bike, and who knew nutrition back then? I had Hawaiian sweetbread and Gatorade. That's what I had. My crew was giving me that. So I get weighed as we start the run, and then drinking Gatorade and eating Hawaiian sweetbread. And I get to about mile 5, and you get on the scale. And I could hear the guy in the walkie-talkie. He's like, hey, can you give me that again? The guy's gained 5 pounds. What's he doing? So then we're running along. In the last part of the run, you run up Diamond Head and you run down in the Kapilani Park. And I'm running up Diamond Head. My crew is behind me in their Fiat convertible, lighting up the road. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the coolest thing. I didn't know I could do this. I was going to do this in 2 days. I'm going to finish this in 1 day. And I'm running up Diamond Head. The crew's behind me. I start thinking there's going to be cheerleaders at the finish, all sorts of excitement. I can't wait to get there. It's going to be awesome. I come running into the park. I look up. There's like a light bulb above me. There's a chalk line on the road. And I hear a voice in the darkness. It's like, hey, yeah, you in the race? Yeah, you're done. That's it. Because that guy sitting in the park, one guy doing 1-arm push-ups, and me. And it was like, but it was something about that event that I finished it, and I was like, I changed my perception of me. I knew that I now had this business card that told me I could accomplish anything. I could change my perception of myself. So I just became an evangelist for the silly sport of triathlon, and was teaching school at the time. Went to work for a magazine called Running News, convinced the editor to change it to Running and Triathlon News based on the 108 idiots who had just done the Ironman, with me in 1980. And that led to starting Competitor Magazine and led to everything else that we've accomplished, led to the Challenge Athletes Foundation, led to Breakfast with Bob, and all the other stuff we've done over the years.
I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24/7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code Ageless15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code Ageless15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode. Bob, what a journey. So this is 1980.
Yeah.
And this is like 45 odd years ago. I thought it might actually behoove us to take a quick step back and to educate us. For someone who thinks triathlons, or maybe Ironman, are just for superhumans, can you break it down? What is, I know it's a simplistic question, but what is a triathlon? And what is, again, an Ironman? And are there any other variations of the event?
Yeah, lots of variations, which is why I still love it. So I've done at least one triathlon every year since 1978. And like this, I did a race in Pasadena 2 weeks ago. Started with a 5K run around the Rose Bowl, then a 9-mile bike ride around 3 loops around the Rose Bowl. And then you ran over to the pool. You swam, 150, 200 yards in the pool. That's a triathlon, right? Anybody can do it. And that's what's so cool about it. You've got events like that. You have Olympic distance, which is a 1,500-meter swim, a 40K bike, a 10K run, and called the Olympic distance because all of those are Olympic distance. There's an Olympic event, a 1,500-meter swim. There's a 40K time trial, and then there's the 10K run. So that actually those distances were really instrumental in getting triathlon into the Olympics. Triathlon became an Olympic sport in 2000. The first triathlon was 1974. First Ironman was 78. So that's not a long journey to become an Olympic sport. Action had been accepted as an Olympic sport by 94, I think, or so. So really, you're talking about 20 years from the first ever triathlon to being accepted into the Olympic Games, which is pretty amazing. So there's the Ironman distance, which obviously is what started in Oahu in 1978, and in 2028 we'll be celebrating 50 years. I wrote the coffee table books on the 25th anniversary, the 30th anniversary, the 40th anniversary, and there's a mystique to the Ironman World Championships in Hawaii that is just because this Dave Scott raced on, Dave Scott, John Howard, Scott Tinley, all the legends raced on that course. And when you walk down these steps into the bay where they do the Ironman swim, every Ironman world champion has walked down those same steps, right? There's something about it when you hear of Pay and Save Hill and the Mamuku Winds and the Queen K Highway. There's all this mystique associated with the event that's well-deserved. It's one of those things that the course has not changed much over the years, so the times matter. When Patrick Langay became the first guy to go under 8 hours there, or Paul Newby Frazier became the first one to go under 9 hours for women back in the day. It's, there's so much fun history there, but it's one of those things that as the sport has grown, you have the full Ironman, then you have Ironman 70.3, which is like a half distance, and it's become one of the more popular sports in the world. It changes people's lives, and what I like about it is for a hyperactive kid, it is the best sport, and a kid of all ages. So if you're out there and you start to swim, there's some trepidation. Oh my God, I'm jumping into this body of water. It could be cold. It could be dark. There could be big fish, right? Someone could be playing bongos on your head. There's all this scary stuff. Well, then all of a sudden you're swimming along and you're feeling pretty good. And then you get to a point where you're thinking, well, I'm tightening up a little bit. Oh, I'm out of the water. Now I get to ride my bike. And you get on a bike and you're riding along and you're feeling loosening up. Then you're in a groove, and then you're going, my neck is stiff, my back is stiff. I get to go run. And then the toughest transition is you get off the bike, and usually your legs feel like crap because they've been going in circles, and now they're weight bearing, and now they're like not very happy about this. But then they loosen up. Then you're done. Then you're in the beer garden. It's 9 a.m. It's a good day. So that's what's great about the sport. It changes lives for the better. It's something anybody can do, right? When you talk about the event, like I mentioned, the Pasadena race, when you're talking about a 3-mile run and a 9-mile bike ride and a 150-yard swim in a pool, it's anybody can do our sport. We've got a lot of welcome mat events out there that people can get into. And, I'll talk to people who swim, bike, and run on a regular basis, used to do triathlons, and they consider themselves triathletes, and they might not have raced a triathlon in 20 years, but it's their lifestyle. And that's where most of their friends are people who share that. You do long bike rides with people, you become very, very close from doing those long workouts every weekend.
Bob, all these decades later, your passion for the sport is so evident. I can just see your face light up and your eyes sparkle when you talk about the Ironman. I always thought of triathlons as more of an event
Mm.
than really a sport.
Right.
I thought that this is something that, people, they might do other sports, quote unquote, and they might run, bike, swim, but then they decide that they're going to add this this medal, this like little ribbon on their sleeve and go and do this uh, triathlon event to earn the bragging rights. But I think what you're telling us over here is that this is really a sport. In my mind, I see this bridge I need to make, which is individually, all of these feel like sports. But when you
Mm.
put them together, they seem somewhat complex. Different sports requiring different types of uh, skills. And I think what I hear from you is that, hey, this is a sport for everybody.
It is.
So help us understand, what is it about the sport that you find so approachable? Because some of us may think that it is not that approachable.
I think it's an equal opportunity abuser. It doesn't really care if you're big or tall or short or wide or missing a leg or in a wheelchair. It doesn't matter. You get from point A to point B, you're a triathlete. You get to Kona and you get from point A to point B, you're an Ironman. Also, if you're a runner, say you're a solid hardcore runner, when you get to 40, 45 years old, you're not getting better, right? From there on, it's pretty much downhill. A few people can, but most people, the pounding takes its toll, and it's harder to run faster at 60 than you ran at 50. But as a triathlete, I can be better I can buy a better bike. I can get better wheels. I can get better wetsuit. I can train differently. And the fact that you're doing swimming and cycling, you can really do less running. Running is the most impactful on the joints and everything. But you can create a lot of fitness by by swimming there's no weight bearing there. For cycling, unless you get hit by a car or you go down, you're really, there's no weight bearing there either. So it's really the running that is hard on your body, but you can replace a lot of those workouts, a lot of the hardcore running workouts with hardcore cycling workouts, hardcore swimming workouts. I call triathlon the fountain of youth. You can be doing this sport forever. You seriously can. You can be, 70, 80. I'm 73 now. There's guys in the I call our age group the 70 to death. So we've got 70 to 75, 70, 70, 74, 75, 79, 80, 84. And we've got some races you'll go to, there'll be 8, 10 folks in 80 to 84, or you'll have some races Bill Bell was 90 years old and he was still racing. So it is a wonderful sport. The camaraderie, the community. But we'll get there. In a lot of us in that what I call the 70 to death, 60 to death categories, and we're usually there really early, and we'll be standing there in the racks as the sun's coming up, and it's like, why do we do this? And it's universal because we can. You can get up early and get there and be with your buddies, and again, by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, you're done. You've already gotten this real high in your life by getting in a body of water. Most people aren't awake yet, and then you're getting out and you're riding your bike, and then you're running, and then you're congratulating each other. When you're in these events, you're racing against yourself and you're racing against a course. You're not really racing against the other guys, right? They're in your age group or you're not in your age group, but who cares? It's really all about you against you. And, so you've gotten up early. It would have been real easy to hit the snooze and not get up. You did that. You get to the event. I mean, the pre-race stuff is really part of it. It's getting your gear together, coming there, hanging out, talking story, coming up with your excuses for why you're going to have a crappy race, and then celebrating afterwards. It's just, there's just something special about it.
Bob, yeah, I mean, your message about let's say, also the universality of triathlons
Mhm.
is loud and clear. Can you give us a sense of where is the sport of triathlon today in terms of its ability to reach across, let's say, age, gender, even national barriers? Like, how widespread and popular is the sport? Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
Well, being an Olympic sport means you're in a lot of countries. In Europe right now, the sport is on fire. It's doing really well. Actually, in the U.S., the numbers of participants in the sports has gone down from 2011 to 2019. I think our the number of finishers in triathlons went down from 570,000 at the peak down to 350,000 at that point. And then I think even during COVID, we lost a fair number of events. And this last year, I think we had 302,000 finishers have raced around the country. Still good numbers, but back in the heyday of the sport, we had like in '80, we had this United States Triathlon Series, which was a series of events around the country, all of them, mile swim, um, uh, mile swim, 25-mile bike ride, 10K run. So very doable compared to the Ironman distances. And you had those in major cities, Chicago, New York, all those all around the country. And then in the from 2006, 7 till 2015 or 16, you had the Lifetime Fitness Series. They had a series around the country that had New York and Chicago, and they had a pro series called the Toyota Cup. So there was a lot of awareness. With Competitor Magazine, when we had our magazine from '87 till I left in 2014, you had triathletes on the cover of those magazines a few times a year, and those magazines were all over the country. So there was an awareness of the sport that there isn't at this point, right? There's used to be an NBC show for the Ironman, but they don't do that anymore. So it's there's a lot of contributing factors why the sport is down. But I think the key is that with LA 2028 coming up, where triathlon will be on display in the Olympics in the U.S. When I look at one of the big growth areas for us was when we had the first ever Olympic triathlon in 2000 in Sydney. That was a huge boost because triathlon was the first event of the games. And I think we jumped to 125,000 members of what was then TriFed, now USA Triathlon. So there's ebb and flow for sports. I love the sport. I think it changes lives for the better. Ironman is still doing really well, and Ironman 70.3 has been a wonderful addition. Something people, you can't fake your way through an Ironman. Yeah, we're talking 112-mile bike ride. You better be doing those 6-7 hour bike rides. You better be doing long runs. But when you're talking about a 1.2-mile swim, 56-mile bike ride, and a 13.1-mile run, to finish that type of event, you can sort of get by on you're riding 2-3 hours a couple times a week. You're going for you're doing a couple 10Ks. You can sort of fake a half, but you can't fake a full. So but that, which I think is one of the reasons that you've got great growth in 70.3 races around the world, especially in Europe and Asia. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of potential moving forward there too.
Bob, I believe there are now triathlon like events all over the world now.
Mm-hmm.
Curious if you have a story, or like curious actually if you heard about a triathlon happening in some part of the world that even took you away with the way they were able to improvise the event.
Mm. Well, it's interesting because when you think about triathlon, one of the reasons when we're looking at actually endurance events, the Ironman and the Rock and Roll Marathon were really the first events where they made a financial impact on the community. So look at it from this perspective. When we had, running events back in the day in the 80s and 90s, the cities looked at these events as, okay, we'll give you guys a permit to block off the roads, but you're a pain in the ass, right? You're keeping people from getting to the church. You're keeping people from, from getting the grocery. It was pain. Well, and then you had New York City Marathon, Boston Marathon, London Marathon. These marathons, huge financial impact on the cities because people are coming in to do these events and staying in hotels and renting cars and buying meals. So the cities, when Tim Murphy was the guy who created the Rock and Roll Marathon, and we were early investor in rock and roll. Rock and roll started in San Diego, and the event had 20,000 people first time out. And there really hadn't been many new marathons in the country, and there had never been a marathon series, like a series of marathons. So what happened then is Tim Murphy took the rock and roll model around the country, and the idea was, hey, Arizona, we did 20,000 people with a marathon in San Diego. If we do a marathon and a half marathon here in Phoenix area, we'll get 30,000. And it's like the Super Bowl moves around, comes back every 15, 20 years to the same city. This is every year. This is January every year. Rock and Roll Arizona is going to bring you, the first Rock and Roll Arizona had 37,000, right? So you're talking about how many hotel nights. So these cities start paying the events to come because they're filling up hotel rooms. That changed the whole model of endurance sports. And the same with the Ironman. The Ironman, people come in, they might stay for 5, 6 days, bring the family, stay at the nice hotels. So Ironman Arizona, Ironman Coeur d'Alene, Ironman started growing around the U.S. And it was interesting because early on, this guy, Graham Fraser, was the one who was putting on Ironman Canada when he was tasked to put on the first Ironman in the continental U.S. They had Kona, but he put on Ironman Lake Placid, and the thing sold out immediately. You had this perfect storm of Ironman and online registration and coming into a place like Lake Placid. So Lake Placid sells out immediately, and it sells out so quickly, they add a second event in Panama City, Florida. That sells out immediately. Next thing you know, they're adding events, Ironman Arizona, Ironman Wisconsin, Ironman St. George, Ironman Coeur d'Alene. It went on, but in every model there, in every case, the cities are paying to bring the events in for rock and roll and for Ironman. So when they're paying, now they're a partner. And when you're a partner, you're providing cheaper police, a better cost on city services, that type of stuff, because you want people to come. You want to fill up hotel rooms, especially now. And nowadays, these cities are hurting for dollars. And so if you bring an event that's going to fill up hotel rooms, they're going to help you financially and in other ways to come there. So your local 5K is not getting money from the city, but the Ironman and rock and roll, those type of events are. So when I look at the change in perception of our events from a pain in the ass to something that's going to put revenue in our pockets from the city, the cities. That's a huge change. And here's a perfect example: rock and roll half marathon in Virginia Beach. Anyways, they were having problems around Labor Day because the kids were about to start college, and they would come into the city before, over Labor Day weekend, and put like 10 kids in a room and just party, and and basically the downtown area became a problem. Well, what happened is they brought in the Virginia Beach, rock and roll Virginia Beach. Next thing you know, every hotel is sold out with high-end folks, and problem solved, right? The downtown mess before school started. Now you had these people coming in and who are bringing revenue into the coffers for the city, rather than having issues in your downtown area with all the kids. Just it became like spring break, right? So now it became, hey, we've got these runners who are not staying they're staying at the Four Seasons. They're staying at the really nice hotels. They are spending money on food and travel, etc. And, and that became the next step in this. People will travel to do an Ironman. People will travel to do a marathon. Will people travel to do a half marathon? Will people travel to do a Ironman 70.3, a half Ironman? Both those companies, and it's ironic, Ironman owns both now. But back then, they were totally separate entities. And they found that, okay, people will travel for a 70.3. People will travel for a half marathon. So the benefit for the city, you don't have to block off as many roads. And you're getting 15, 20,000 people coming to do a half marathon, or you're getting 3,000 to do a 70.3. Perfect example. We just had the 70.3 World Championships in New Zealand, and in Taupo, New Zealand, and they had the women's race one day and the men's race the next day. There was over 6,000 participants. I think it was like 4,000 men and 2,000 women, and it was the city, 6,000 people. That's a lot of financial impact for the city. Plus, it's good quality people. You're talking about high-end folks who are coming to your town, who will probably come back. And what reason Lake Placid was so popular is people could go there and ride other, if the race is in July or August, people could come starting in May and train on the course. Get used to the course, be ready for the course. So there's hotel revenue and Airbnb revenue that's coming, not just race week, but also other times of the year as people start training. Same for Kona. People will go and do training camps in Kona. And that's another revenue stream that the island is getting because of their association with Ironman.
Bob, it's been, quite a journey, and going from this like niche and quirky thing to becoming this loved and admired sport by communities worldwide. Sounds like a very astute move to be able to collaborate with cities, planners, urban institutions. I think what is really a win-win solution. And I think there is much that other sports, let's say, niche outdoor sports can learn, or maybe are learning. I see this in the sport of rock climbing, where we still have a lot of contention between cities, landowners, but then there are a couple of places where the cities, or maybe the climbing community, has turned the cities into partners and advocates. So is there maybe one of the lessons you've learned, Bob, in building this framework on collaborating with cities, maybe a couple of quick lessons that other sports can also learn from, to again turn even non-athletes into champions of their sport?
Yeah. I think what the other sports can gain from that is it's heads and beds is a big deal, right? These cities are always looking for revenue, right? People they need to fill up hotels. And perfect example, when Rock and Roll Las Vegas happened, and you had 44,000 people coming to do that event, and very few from Vegas are doing the run, so it's all people staying in hotels. They actually, what Rock and Roll did is they moved the event to Sunday night, strip at night. You ran the strip at night, and you had 44,000 people. And by moving the event to the nighttime, what happened? Everybody had to stay an extra hotel night. Yeah, so you're talking about what, 150, 160,000 hotel nights. That's real business. So when you can have your sport impact the cities financially by filling up hotels and be able to document that your X number of people are coming from outside the area, that's what the cities don't do this stuff out of the kindness of their heart. They're not blocking off the strip in Las Vegas because they're nice guys. They're blocking off the strip because there's 44,000 people who are coming and running and bringing their family and friends and, having a great time while they're there. So that's understanding that the cities need revenue. If you can bring them revenue, if you give them heads and beds, they will always work with you. That's what it's all about. And in Europe, the Olympic rings mean more than they do here in the States. So what I mean by that is a city will pay World Triathlon to bring an event to their city in Hamburg, or not Hamburg's a bad example because they do really well, but like Yokohama, Japan, they'll do a World Triathlon event there, and they'll just have the pros, the Olympic hopefuls will be racing there. So it might be 50 men, 50 women, and some bureaucrats. So they'll provide hotel and provide all this stuff for this event because it's associated with the Olympics. It's prestige for the city. You go to the city of San Diego and you sit down with them. We talked about bringing the Olympic trials here, and they were like, wait, Rock and Roll brings us 25,000 people. You're talking about you're going to have 100 men and women and want us to give them, you want to give them hotels. You want us to fly them in because they're associated with the Olympics. We don't care about the Olympics. Well, it doesn't affect us. We care about, are you going to fill up hotels? Are you bringing me 20,000 people? Are you bringing me 10,000 people? What are you bringing? That's really what it's all about for cities. So if you're talking a smaller event like climbing, how you create a climbing festival in a major city. What's great about climbing, and the climbing actually just got into the Paralympics for 2028 in LA. We were actually stunned because we thought for sure that adaptive surfing was getting in, but it became rock climbing, which is awesome because when you're talking about the prefab mountains or the climbing, you can put that in a mall. You can put it anywhere, right? So you're not blocking off roads. You're not impacting anybody. You can build so much around that's what matters. You're saying, hey, we're going to bring in people from all over the country for our national climbing championship. And we're going to fill up to 10,000 hotel nights. We're going to do 10,000 hotel nights for your city. That's the point. Then there's a conversation to be had. Now, the one city that doesn't fit into this model, there's an event called Challenge Roth. It used to be Ironman Germany. It's in a little town in Bavaria called Roth, Germany. And there's 14 hotel rooms in the city of Roth. Not 14 hotels, 14 hotel rooms. There's like no hotels there. 250,000 people there on race day. They're camping. They're staying in motorhomes. It's Woodstock. It's crazy. People stay in Nuremberg and drive over. But the cool thing about that event, the swim is in this beautiful river, and hot air balloons floating above the river is for the swim. And then classical music is being played as people are swimming along. And there's everywhere you look, there's people, 250,000 spectators. Then you get on a bike and the roads are just pristine. And you go up this thing called Solar Hill. And if you've seen the Tour de France where the people are standing in the road and peel back as people are climbing. That's exactly what that is. Solar Hill, you go up Solar Hill twice, and the crowds are deafening. Then you get into the run, and there's like a mile of picnic benches, and it's a beer mop. Basically, is people are drinking and cheering you on as you run through, and then they have a stadium for 10,000 people that they build a week out. I mean, it's a piece of the finish line is there all the time, but they build a stadium for 10,000 people starting a week before the race, and you finish in the stadium, and you run into this third of a mile loop, and finish inside this stadium with people, 10,000 people going out of their minds. It's Challenge Roth is one of those bucket list items that the event sells out in 90 seconds with 4,000 individuals and 1,500 relay teams. It's crazy.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together, training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Incredible, Bob. Yeah, like, you know, some cities have the infrastructure, some cities may not, but then they have been able to create a different kind of opportunity for athletes and maybe even create this mystique and this aura that attracts people to partake in a different type of environment with the same event. One thing that I am still curious about, which is a lot of people, again, who are impressed by triathlon and want to get started, but feel there is this barrier to entry, at least in my mind, which is, hey, I'm the everyday person. I can go running. I can, hop on a bike, but I may not know how to swim, but maybe there's a pool nearby. But when you put all of those things together, when you add in the logistics, when you add in the pocketbook needs to be able to finance those things.
You think you need a $10,000 bike? Yeah.
Yeah. Is there one thing you would like to advise those people on how can they take that first step towards realizing this fantasy they have of becoming a triathlete?
Well, the deal is, and I've been a firm believer in the reverse triathlons and pool triathlons because we get brand new people in. So what's great about it is, one, anybody can do it. Everybody out there has run or walked the 5K. The event the other day there's another one on the military base here in Los Alamitos called Race on the Base. And a lot of times putting on these races, logistics, blocking off roads, police, water, you need a lake, you need roads, you need police, you need lifeguards. Well, this Race on the Base is on the military base. So the race director walks out and puts a cone out at 1.5 miles, right? For the 5K, drops a cone out there. He's got, you run out, you run around the cone and come back. The bike ride, the 12-mile bike ride is on the runway. They don't block off one road. It's 2 loops of the runway. Then you ride over and then you run over to the pool and you do that. So there's, you're finding areas around a community pool where you can put an event on without blocking anything off, without blocking off many roads is great. That Pasadena race I was talking about, they have a 5K, so it's 3 miles of road blocking off total. So blocking 3 miles for the 5K and then using that same 5K loop 3 times for the bike ride. So you're doing a 9-mile bike, but you're only blocking off 3 miles of road. But the main deal is swimming is still the thing that can be a deterrent for folks. It's scary. You and I go for a run and we get tired, we walk. You and I go for a bike ride, we get tired, we walk. You and I go out in the ocean and one of us gets tired, we die. That's a problem, right? That's a main thing. And the glare that happens when you're swimming, or people hitting you, or kelp and current and big fish, there's all that crap. So that's what I love about these pool tries. Warm water, lane lines, you ran a 5K, the bike, a lot of people think you need some $10,000 bike to do this sport. The reality is, if it's got wheels on it and it turns, you're fine. You get out there for these pool triathlons or shorter triathlons. You can buy a bike off of Craigslist. You can get a used bike somewhere from a police auction like I did. Or a lot of people, their bike hadn't seen, light of day since Clinton was president. You pull that thing out and ride it. It's no big deal. So the things that we have that we hear on the sport of triathlon, one, really expensive. Okay, you don't need to have that high-end bike. You need a wetsuit. Okay, well, you can look online and get wetsuits too pretty reasonably. Running shoes, you need running shoes. But if you're there and you're understanding that anybody can do this sport, seriously, and if you have the skill set of you wore arm floaties as a kid, you had a paper route, and you played capture the flag and ran. You've got our skill set. You don't need to be some uber athlete, and people think you need to be an uber athlete, but you don't. If you swim a little bit a few times a week and you get into a master swim program, every city has a master swim program. What that means is anybody over 18. There's usually a coach on the deck who will work with you. They have lanes, like here, the fast people are in this lane, the pregnant women, and the truck, what I call the truck lane, where all of us started, where you go swimming really slow. Maybe it's 2 minutes for 100 meters. You start getting better. You swim a little bit, you get better. And then, the cycling part, everybody rides a bike, so it's not that big a deal. I just think that people watch the Ironman on TV and think that's triathlon. And that's the tip of the triangle. That's the tip of the pyramid. Those are the fastest, the best. But I want people to work up to it. Start out with the pool triathlon. Get into the lifestyle. Make some friends, some training buddies. And then the sport becomes social, right? Hey, we're going for a 50-mile ride, and then we're going to In-N-Out Burger, right? That type of stuff. And that's what makes a sport great is, most of my friends are friends from the sport of triathlon goes back, 20, 30, 40 years.
Absolutely. Well, community helps us keep going in these lifestyle sports. Bob, taking a quick segue into your own life and career,
Mhm.
from that first event in maybe 1980 that you spoke about, which maybe lit that fire, what inside you, maybe just beyond being an athlete, drove you to become this storyteller and advocate for the community?
I think, one, as a kid, I was never a good athlete, but the block I lived on, I always liked the games I liked playing. And I realized early on that the one skill I did have is I would come, we're on the block and I want to play a baseball game. I go to Cush's house and say, hey, Cush, we're going to play some baseball in the street. First question you're going to ask me is, who else is playing? So now I got to think quickly, right? Ned's playing, Johnny's playing, Larry's playing. Okay, I'm in. Because nobody wants to be the first, right? Nobody wants to be that first person. So now I got to get to their houses and say, Cush is in. Cush is playing. Larry, let's go. Oh, who else? I got Larry and Johnny, and then you go to Larry's house and say, okay, Jimmy and Cush are in. So, because You got to get people out there. So then everybody comes in and we're all playing. We all have a great time. But so even when I had the magazine, we're trying to sell advertising in the magazine, and I'm going to different running stores or bike shops. What sells is who else is in? Well, Nike is advertising and Gatorade is in. So and so has been. The credibility you get from other things, a lot of other people, allows you to sell that. So that became sort of the mantra. We worked at Running and Triathlon News. Running and Triathlon News went out of business, and that was in April of '87. And so my partner, Lois Schwartz, she was the art teacher when I was running a PE program, and the two of us left teaching together to go work at Running and Triathlon News. And I became LA editor. She became LA photographer. She learned to shoot the camera and becoming one of the best sports photographers in history. But when the magazine went out of business, so I went and met with a couple of magazine publishers in the state of California. One guy had a magazine called California Bicyclist. Another one had a magazine called Southwest Cycling. I went to both of them and said, if we did a magazine that covered running, triathlon, and cycling, it would be really popular. And both of them told me the same thing. They said, listen, we'd never put a skinny runner on the cover of our magazine. And triathlon, this is 87. Triathlon's a fad. It'll be gone in 5 years. So the only sport we care about is cycling. I'm like, oh, crap. So we came home and some friends came to us and gave us a check for $17,000 and said, go start your own magazine. So we were underneath 10,000 pounds of bike racks in a guy's garage for $200 a month for 200 square feet. And we launched our first edition of Competitor in June of '87. Our first print bill was 20 and we had 17. So we were earning 3,000 in all. I lived on friends' floors for a couple of years as we grew the magazine, didn't pay ourselves. And, but we loved going to the events. When you stand at a finish line and you see some people come across their first finish line and just how moved they are by that accomplishment, it changes. I always tell race directors, it's easy to, I'm tired of getting up in the morning. I'm tired of putting the water out. I'm tired of doing all this stuff. So make sure you take the time to go stand by your finish line. Stand by your finish line and watch that cathartic moment when someone realizes they could do something they never thought they could do. Even if it's a 5K, even if it's 10 mile. I remember I'd hand out Competitor magazine at the races. Every once in a while, someone would say, well, I'm not competitive, meaning they thought it meant elite athlete, competitive, and an elite athlete. I said, well, what time did you get up today? I got up at 5. And did you just run the 5K? Yeah. You're a competitor. You compete with yourself. You got up early in the morning to run 3 miles. Who does that? Not that many people. You are definitely part of our tribe. You are a competitor. Okay, I didn't see it that way. That was important, right? It's every single day we need to bring new people in. And that's, I think, maybe we've lost our way a little bit in triathlon. We aren't doing the hard yards that we used to do to get runners to understand that, hey, you know what? If you add swimming and cycling to your running, you can run less and run forever. All right? Because if you're just running, you're going to beat yourself up to the point where you're going to go slower and you're going to get out of the sport because you're injured all the time. Because we've had Gwen Jorgensen was a swimmer and runner at University of Wisconsin, and USA Triathlon recruited her for sport triathlon. She didn't know how to ride a bike, right? She had no idea how to ride a bike. 2010 is when they recruited her. By 2012, she's on the Olympic team in London. By 2014, 15, 16, she's the very best in the world. She was running faster by swimming and cycling and running less than when she was in college, when she was just running. I'm a firm believer that you add swimming and cycling to your running and cut back on the amount of running you're doing, you will be a better runner and you'll be able to do it forever.
Bob, yeah, I mean, you are a born spokesperson, let's say, for not just for the sport of triathlon, but I think in some ways for the bread and butter of the show, which is for staying ageless, I think listeners to the show will clearly appreciate the points you make about being able to diversify one sport and include a variety of non-impact ones. In this case, I like to joke that, well, I don't have the capacity for much swimming right now because I'm just involved in fully involved in rock climbing at the moment. But I do think that there's going to be a time when like things will change for me. And the two sports I think that will keep me going are probably doing slow laps in a lake, preceded or succeeded by getting on my mountain bike and going on trails. So I think that part is so clear. This part of the conversation, which I call being ageless, Bob, when I speak with you, you are in your early 70s now, but your energy and your, let's say, optimism is so evident. So what is your secret, Bob? What is it that keeps you staying fired?
Wow. Well, I mean, a lot of just over the years. I mean, just being with positive, upbeat people, and that's the other thing is when you talk about being ageless, a lot of people tend to hang out. If you're in your 70s, you hang out with the 70-year-olds, and what are you reading? They're reading obits. They're talking about medication, right? But if you're going to events and there's 30-year-olds there, and all you're talking about is your PRs and how to get faster, you can get younger, right? You hang with young people. That to me is the best thing. And with competitor, we sold that a couple of times. Sold it in 2008 and sold it in 2012. And then I started Breakfast with Bob, our YouTube show in 2010-ish, and kept just rebranded everything under that. But it was one of those things with when you talk about ageless, to me, what that means is you hang with younger people so that you can accomplish what you want to do, but more importantly, you get the energy that they have. And one working for our foundation, if I've mentioned our Challenge Athlete Foundation, but we started that back in 1994 when a friend of ours was injured for a second time. He'd been a football player at Yale, was on his motorcycle going to acting class in New York City, got hit by a bus, lost his leg below the knee, came back to run a 3:16 marathon with a walking leg, and then came to Ironman, where I met him, Jim McLaren. He ran 10:42 in Kona, top 20% everybody in a race, stopping to pour sweat out of his prosthetic leg as he's running along. Well, at that point, he's sponsored by Budweiser, and he's traveling the world. And then 8 years later, he got hit again. He was racing in Mission Viejo. A man went through a closed intersection, hit the back of his bike, propelled headed first into a pole, became a quadriplegic. And at that point, I covered a lot of wheelchair athletes through Competitor Magazine. And the one thing athletes would tell me, I'd ask them, what's the worst part about your new life? Invariably, it was 30 years old. Here come mom and dad back in my life. I was independent. Now I'm not. So our goal became, we're going to do a little triathlon for Jimmy. We're going to raise $25,000, buy Jimmy a van with hand controls to give him independence. Well, we raised 49, thought our job was done. And then 3 amputee women came to us and said, it's great we did it for Jimmy, but did you know when you get injured, your health insurance covers a walking around leg in an everyday wheelchair because they consider sport a luxury item. Insurance doesn't cover anything to do with sport. So now it's been 32 years. We've raised $180 million. We've sent out over 50,000 grants now. We'll be sending out a 50,000th grant this month to challenged athletes in all 50 states, 73 countries, and more importantly, in 105 different sports. We just sent out our 105th grant. 105th sport was wheelchair pickleball. What I've learned from our athletes, and you see our athletes are missing body parts and they've got big smiles on their faces because they're a lot of cases, they're happy to be alive. They've gone through some pretty major trauma in their life. And you see them not just living, but thriving and understanding that I lost a leg. I was never going to be an Olympic athlete, but I'm going to the Paralympics. I'm going and I'm going to be riding a bike in the Paralympics, and I'm going to get them out. I mean, it's when you're with our kids from our foundation, every day is a positive. Every day is a way to sort of, our athletes sort of look trauma in the face and say, you know what, you're not going to bring me down. And you've got athletes, I was with a young man the other day with, he's got cerebral palsy and he's adaptive CrossFit is his sport and he's killing it. Right? Then we got another young man, he's playing collegiate baseball at East Carolina University, was in a tubing accident, lost his leg below the knee, and he had to have his leg amputated. And his, night before the operation, when the leg amputated, he says, "Dad, what does this mean?" Dad says, "Well, Parker, it means you'll never play baseball again." And then Mom steps in and goes, "Well, don't be telling our son what he can't do." And then Parker saying, "But Mom, no baseball player with a prosthetic leg has played Division I baseball." And Mom goes, "But there has to be a first. Why can't it be you?" And it was. It was the first last February. And then the last couple of days, Friday night, he got his first hit since having his leg amputated. 2 days before, he drove in his first run with a sacrifice fly. And you see it picked up by SportsCenter, picked up by World News Tonight, picked up by MLB Network. And you're just seeing these kids changing lives, because then other kids in their families are coming out to watch them play who are also missing a leg and are seeing him play baseball. So if he's playing baseball, why can't they play baseball? So, you think about the minutia that a lot of us deal with first world problems, and then you see the happiness that kids who have real issues are dealing with. There's every time, if you have a prosthetic leg or missing an arm or in a wheelchair, every time you leave the house, the spotlight is on you. Always. You don't blend. And you either embrace it or you shrink from it. And watching our kids embrace it has been the greatest gift of all.
So badass, Bob. Yeah. It sounds like the work you have put in with adaptive athletes, and also, I believe, the Challenged Athletes Foundation, your contributions have come back to you, maybe even as a gift to you, in being able to keep you inspired.
Every day.
So fantastic. I want to ask you, you have spent a lifetime around endurance athletes, the best pros to everyday grinders.
Right.
What have you learned about longevity? Any hard-won strategies, any surprising things you have learned about not just staying fit, but staying hungry and fulfilled as we age?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think what I've seen lately in triathlon is, a lot of you guys who move on, Sebastian Kienle and Jan Frodeno, when they retire, it's like, well, what's next? It's almost like a professional athlete. It's not almost. It is a professional athlete, but it's almost like, your professional soccer players, professional baseball players, all those guys, your career is basically over by 40. Very few will even get that long. So that's your life. That's been your life goal. What's next? And seeing our athletes getting into CrossFit and getting into totally different. Like Ryan Hall was a 2:04:58 marathoner and was skinny as a rail. And between 2007, 2011, he ran 9 or 10 marathons, all of them under 2:12. And then he was done. He was fried. And now he's doing all these cool adventures. He's become like a bodybuilder, not a bodybuilder, but he's a very large human being. We covered a thing he did a few years ago where he was wanted to run a mile, and every quarter, he would stop and do weights, and then he would do another quarter and do weights, another quarter do it. So the whole idea was, could he run a sub 5 minute mile doing, lifting every quarter mile? And it was really wild. And he did. I forget how much he lifted, but it was a lot, freaking ton. But he says, like, as a competitor, if somebody's a competitor and they're a runner, a triathlete, a rock climber, whatever it be, they're going to eventually move into something else and bring that same competitive nature with that. And how can I be better? How can I be best? Perfect example. There was a woman named Jamie Whitmore who was what Xterra is? It's like you swim, you mountain bike, and you run. The mountain bike rides are really brutal. You're on the Flume Trail up in Tahoe and, 12,000 feet and that type of stuff. So she won 37 Xterras, one world championship. And then she was having pain in the back of her leg. And the doctors are like, yeah, we can't find anything. Maybe you're just imagining it, or maybe you have a low threshold of pain. For somebody who's riding her bike up at 11, 12,000 feet, they don't have a low threshold of pain. It turned out she had a tumor wrapped around her sciatic nerve. And she knew when they cut that away, she probably would end up with drop foot. It wouldn't be able to run again, which means her career as a Paralympic or as an Xterra athlete would be over. So that's exactly what happened. And I actually called her husband, Courtney, at the hospital and said, Jamie will need sport. One of the most competitive people I've ever seen in my life. She actually raced during, Ned's era. Ned, she was just getting into it when Ned was still, Ned's always been relevant, but yeah. So anyways, we told her about paracycling and paraswimming, and she got into parascycling. And in 2016, she won a gold and a silver medal in Rio in her second athletic career. And then she went to the Paralympics in 2020 and then 2024. And she wants to go in 2028. When somebody's a competitor and somebody's got that, that drive, it doesn't go away. But I take it back. Someone like Mark Allen is 6-time Ironman world champion. And very few of these guys can just stop cold turkey. But he won his last race in 95. He had taken a year off. He was 37 years old. A guy named Thomas Hellriegel, who I think was 25, had a 12-minute lead off the bike. And, Mark talks about running along, with one guy on each shoulder, one going, dude, you've won this thing 5 times. Your condo's right there. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. And the other is like, you never know. You never know what might happen. Well, he ended up making up that deficit and winning. And basically it was the ultimate mic drop. The last race he ever did, he came from a 12, 13-minute deficit to win his 6th and final Ironman world championship title, and never did another race after that. So but at the same time, he's surfing, he's fit. I mean, you see very few of these athletes, get out of shape. They find other ways. They ride the gravel bike, they do other things. They maintain that swim, bike, run lifestyle. But it is something that when these top athletes have that drive, that doesn't go away. It might move on to another sport, but it's always there.
Sounds like being able to diversify one's pursuits is a strategic shift.
Yes.
Because once you have been, let's say, doing these triathlons, at some point your times, your performances are not always going to exceed the last.
Oh yeah.
The novelty and that success drug is going to fade, and being able to go out and enjoy learning, participating in different sports, I think it sounds like that's an important tool in that ability to keep that stoke going.
Right.
Curious, any other sports you're doing, Bob, today besides the triathlon? Actually, you spoke about an early climbing trip with Ned in Mexico. Are you also finding other sports that continue to keep you engaged?
Well, you know, what's funny is sometimes when you get to a certain age, it's like if you're a skier and you've been a skier, when you get into your 50s, 60s, you're like, I'm not trying snowboarding. I'm not going to go and hurt myself and do something. So all of my buddies have been telling me, pickleball, you got to play pickleball. And I was talking to one of the, I used to, when I turned 60, every Monday morning, I'd go in for active release therapy, just sort of, because I raced pretty much every weekend. I think in 19, I raced like 36 times or something. But the goal was, you need maintenance. You need body maintenance as you get older. That's just the way it is. It's not like you don't wait for an injury. You go in every Monday morning and, and have, Dan work on me, which was great. So, but I asked him, what are the best sports in terms of your business? The sports that lead to the most injuries, so they keep you busy. And for a long time, it was inline skating because, you got a break that's this big and you're going 30 miles an hour down a hill, spiral fractures, that type of stuff. He loved that. CrossFit says you give me a 50-year-old guy swinging a kettlebell who's fatigued. That's some good injuries right there. Then it was a barefoot running craze, right? Now it's pickleball. Pickleball is because he says you got some 50, 60-year-old person moving quickly side to side. That's a recipe for disaster. Diving, they haven't played a sport in 20 years and they're diving on a pickleball court. So yeah, a lot of injuries. So I've avoided new stuff. I like riding my tri bike. I like riding my mountain bike. And I love getting out on the trails during coming back from the back stuff. Just walking is something. I've never been a walker, but I've started gotten into that. It's sort of fun. And then when I do a race, your mentality becomes different when you're running. You used to get off the bike and run 8-minute miles. And I always say that 11 is a new 8.
Bob, on the physical side, nutrition, training, body maintenance, any common threads you have seen in athletes who have kept performing well into their later years?
Absolutely. If you look at all of our athletes have always relied on chiropractic. They've relied on massage, regular body work, essential. For me, I don't do the massage as often as I'd like. But I think the key for all of us as we age is weight, right? It's eating correctly. It's funny, you learn that your mentality becomes, hey, if I gain a little weight, I'll just go ride more, I'll go run more. And the reality is the only way to really keep weight off, which is a problem as you age, is to you keep weight off by eating right. Right? It's eating the right stuff, eating the right portions, and maintaining good nutrition. What you put in your mouth is really what it's all about. So years ago, I had a guy named Dr. David Clayton on my show, and I was talking about that. I said, well, what's your series? People start talking about eating 6 meals a day and drinking X amount of water. I've never been that disciplined. David said something that really made a lot of sense to me. He said, if it wasn't around a million years ago, don't eat. And if it's in a plastic bag or in a wrapper, it wasn't around a million years ago, so don't eat it. It's like, oh, I get that. All right, so my wife started cooking almond flour and flaxseed oil and just more natural, just eating correctly. Because I never had the discipline to say, I'm going to carry all these meals with me. I'm going to eat every few hours. I'm not that, I'm just too simple. I need something that's easy. And that made sense to me. That resonated. somebody walks, you're at a party and they've got a plate of mini burgers, or they've got a plate of fruit. You're like, wow, I'm going for the fruit. That becomes your reality, that you want to make sure that you eat correctly so that you're not putting weight on your joints. You're not hurting your knees. We try to eliminate bread, butter, sugar, salt. The salt tends to swell the joints, and that seemed to work for me. Everybody's different, but that seemed to work for me. I haven't been as disciplined in this last month or so as I should be. So I've got to get, as we're heading towards racing season, I've got to start training more and making sure that I'm ready for. We have spring sprint coming up in early May, and then we have like 6 or 7 great triathlons here in San Diego.
Amazing. What about mobility? What about putting in the time at the gym with weights?
You know what? I have a little weight room in the house here, and then we've got multiple bikes. I'm going to have 9 bikes here. A couple of stationary bikes. I've got the Zwift set up. I've always had a hard time riding indoors. Just never something that's done much for me. I love going down Fiesta Islands, where the first triathlon started, and that's where I'll probably be going when we're done. But it's a 4-mile loop, and so I go down there and ride 3, 4, 5 loops, and then the best days you start with a cold plunge, and then you head over to the pool, and then you go down to Fiesta Island, and you can get a lot of stuff done by 8, 9 in the morning.
Amazing. Well, what a inspiring start that all of us can learn from. What is perhaps maybe one surprising thing you have learned about, again, aging gracefully?
But again, I think aging gracefully is I don't know if it's graceful. I think it's more about aging and still just loving whatever age you're at. It doesn't again. I'll once January 1 hit, I'm considered. I was 73. Now I turned 74 in May. So once January 1 hit, I was racing as a 74-year-old. Well, next year in January, I age up. In January, I become 75, as far as USA Triathlon is concerned. So, it's important for me right now to start thinking about, okay, it's, I got till January to get my butt in shape so that I can go hopefully win some hardware at some races this next year. Years ago, I was interviewing this 100-year-old swimmer at a master swim meet, national championships. And I'm like, what's the secret to your success? He says, if you can't beat them, outlive them. And I'm like, okay, that's it, right? That's my philosophy. Can't beat them, outlive them. And that's what I'm hoping, outlast them and outlive them.
Absolutely. And I mean, what I'm also learning is that keeping one's sense of humor alive and being able to laugh at oneself at every opportunity is perhaps also key to longevity. Couple of fine questions, Bob, as we round out. You spoke about this, delicious breakfast. I think muffins. That you had this morning. What is one meal, Bob, that you could eat every day?
You know what? There's a meal that I pretty much every day. There's a great little chicken place there called Chicks, and I'll get or the chicken breast with steamed vegetables and a sweet potato. Yes, that's something I can take down every day. For when they used to have one by our office, I'd go there every day and have that was my favorite. And I'm a creature of habit. I can eat the same meal every day and it wouldn't bother me.
Lovely. Tasty yet nutritious.
Yes.
But what may be the greatest gift that you have ever received, and also that you have given to somebody else?
Greatest gift I've received. Wow. That's, that's, I don't know. I mean, I've got, to me, the stuff, I went to the Ironman Hall of Fame, the Ironman statue. Ironman made this huge, gigantic, where is it? I don't know if I can lift it. In the early days of Ironman, they gave out, John Collins actually made these hole in the head trophies, little baby, small trophies that you would get. And he welded them himself. And so Lou Friedland, when they presented me with, it's really more plaque, but then he hit one of these made for me. That meant a lot, because my life has really pretty much been the Ironman with the books and everything else. The thing's probably 20 pounds, but that to me was really important. Just because in the early days, when we first, 78 and 79, John made for each person the little hole in the head trophy. And the whole concept is, it's when Tom Warren, who won the 79 Ironman, was on Johnny Carson's show. And Johnny was like, wait, you went 2.4, 112, 26.2, and they gave you this? It was like this little, the little small hole in the head thing. And he turned it over and goes, Tommy, there's a nut loose. There's a screw loose here. It's like, that's sort of similar. You have a screw loose if you do this stupid thing. But it was like, with the trophy, it's sort of similar. It's so simple, right? It just shows that, you choose something different. You've chosen a sport that is not baseball, football, basketball. You've chose something that can change you in a lot of ways. And, it's so funny when you talk about the greatest gift, when you're 13 miles into that marathon after doing 2.4 and 112.6, 112 mile bike, and now you're halfway through the run and somebody hands you a cold sponge and a Coke, that is the greatest, right? And that's what I like about the sport. It makes you, because you're so raw, you're so broken at certain points, that any little thing will mean the world. I hear you got some people who are doing this race are billionaires. Other people are painting houses for a living. But you ask them at mile 13 what the greatest gift is, it's that cold Coca-Cola, a pile of ice to put on your head, cold sponge to put on the back of your neck. Oh my God, there's nothing better. So it makes you appreciate the little things. It makes you appreciate that, gosh, people are like, oh, I didn't get this couch I wanted to buy. Or it's like, who cares about that crap? You care about when you're in your rawest moments, and somebody is volunteering their time to hand that to you. It's such a great gift to be at these events and to see people change their lives for the better, and learn that there is a better version of themselves, right? That they've dug to a place where they didn't know they could go, and they did it, and they succeeded, and it will change their lives forever.
For those of us who are not watching this on YouTube, Bob just showed us this elegant, can I say heavy trophy that you received. Sounds like they underscored the word iron in Ironman. It looks heavy.
Yeah, but awesome. It's something I have right here in my little collection of all sorts of Ironman memorabilia here behind me.
And Bob, what about the greatest gift you have given somebody else?
Again, I don't know if I've been able to help people, if somebody like a Jamie Whitmore, watching her at the Paralympics, and what was funny is she was going through, I mentioned to you about going through the cancer, and having her the tumor that was wrapped around her sciatic nerve removed. But after that, she got sick again and didn't know what was going on. And doctor said, go in and, get a test and figure out what's going on. And then the doctor walks in and goes, "You're pregnant with twins." And so when we were at the Paralympics in 2016, there were her twins with her when she won the gold medal and the silver medal. And there was, just knowing where she was at, how low her life was at, and seeing where she was then, same with later. And same with this young man, Parker Bird. Parker, I started reaching out, ironically, when he first was injured in a motorboat and the leg cut off below the knee. I started reaching out to the family and just said, "Listen, it's the time is not right now. Parker's going well. You're going to be going through therapy and all sorts of things. But when the time is right, don't hesitate. Give me a call and Challenge Athletes Foundation. I think we can be of service." And what happened is Dad was driving 2.5 hours each way to go see his son at hospital and rehab. And he was listening to books on tape. And in David Goggins' second book, he talks about myself and the foundation. And so he comes home and says to his wife, I was listening to the Goggins book and he talked about this Bob Babbitt guy. And his wife goes, "Yeah, he's been calling here since Parkwood." And he called me that day. And next thing you know, we get him to Chicago to have a prosthetic built for him, a running prosthetic that he can play baseball in. And then he becomes a first Division I ball player to play with a prosthetic leg and ends up on SportsCenter and ends up on World News Tonight. And now is bringing us other kids. So it's one of those things. Parker has been an amazing gift. I feel like maybe we helped him in a small way. And then he's the reciprocal. He's bringing us new kids we didn't know about who now are changing their lives through sport. And probably the one thing, even for the ageless athlete, people underestimate the power of sport. And don't ever give up that. That's the power of sport. I mean, it's one of the things that people tend to do as they age. You go, "Well, I probably shouldn't be riding a bike anymore. I probably shouldn't be doing this." Don't ever say that to yourself. Sport is what makes us whole. Sport is what makes us vibrant. Sport is what makes us who we are. And being ageless just means that you just do sport until they're putting dirt on you, right? As long as there's not dirt on you yet and there's air coming into and out of your lungs, you should be living and breathing sport.
Bob, amazing words to part on. Before we end, would love for you to share how can people learn more about the work you're putting out and your storytelling beyond this podcast.
Well, people can go on YouTube. Breakfast with Bob is on Babbittville. Last year we did 203 interviews, had over 5.5 million minutes of viewing, and a lot of fun. We do the shows from Kona, from Nice, from all the major triathlons around the world. And then Challenged Athletes is just challengedathletes.org, and you can find out how to volunteer, how to donate, go to our Challenged Athletes Foundation YouTube channel and see all of the Parker Bird story I talked about, the Jamie Whitmore story. All those video pieces are on there, and they're really, really well done.
Incredible, Bob. I have checked out your channel, and I have bookmarked some of those conversations to come back to. Thank you so much for coming on Ageless Athlete this morning. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Chris. A pleasure to meet you. Enjoy your climbing trip.
Thank you. That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter the age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup, Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless.
Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through Brad episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.